prepared to say why I think it's so critical and important and vital for all people. I was raised in a very political family, politically active family. I'll start with my family. My grandmother, I think rather than define voting, I would be prepared to say why I think it's so critical and important and vital for all people. I was raised in a very political family, politically active family. I'll start with my family. My grandfather was the first assistant attorney general in the state of Michigan, Attorney Harold Bledsoe. And my mother and uncle were lawyers that became judges. Judge William Bledsoe. My mother was Geraldine Bledsoe Ford, the first black female judge in the state of Michigan. Now, and she was just the third woman. People don't realize that. At 66, she was just the third woman. She was the first black woman in the state of Michigan, but just the third woman. If people hadn't gone out to vote, she wouldn't have gotten in. That was critical. It was critical that people came out to support somebody that was different. At that time in 66, my mother was different. People were still laughing at a woman running for judge. I saw them and I heard them. So had that not occurred, that bar wouldn't have been reached. That bar would not have been reached. So that, there are many reasons it occurred, but as to it relating to this subject matter, it's because the people of the city of Detroit went out and voted. And so I was a young girl at that time trying to get people to vote, trying to convince them, of course, to vote for her. And her position was nonpartisan, so we didn't have to get into Democrat or Republican. So that's an example how voting is very important, even when it doesn't revolve or concern a party. You want, I will speak of judges who are non-impartial. That means just fair. Voting is important to get a whole building full of, there's like 32 judges in here, I believe, a whole building full of people who are just going to be fair when you get there, okay? They're going to listen to you. They're going to understand you. If they don't understand you, they're going to ask questions. They're going to ask your lawyers questions about you, why you did or didn't do what you were supposed to, or why you did what you were supposed to, and add it all up and weigh it all out and make a very fair, impartial decision. Well, that comes from voting. We get here from voters. So that, and just looking at judges, listen, they affect whether or not you have a license. They affect whether or not you have a warrant. They affect whether or not you pay $100 for a fine, $50 for a fine, community service for a fine, whether or not you go to jail on the same charge. It could be armed robbery. Armed robbery could be a year to life. So judges make those decisions. How much more impact can a person have on your life than that, if that's one of the examples? Or if you're going through a divorce, they decide how the property is going to be divided up. If it's a bankruptcy, they decide which debts will be dropped and which ones won't, or which ones will be charged with this amount versus that amount. If it's probate, they decide who, number one, if you need a guardian, number two, who will be it? Will it be your wife, your husband, your sister-in-law? It can get pretty dicey and pretty traumatic in probate. Yeah, because you're arguing about money and death and life and birth and infirmities. Therefore, you need someone who's very sensitive and impartial and understanding. That's voting. All these people get there by voting. So they affect your daily living. So how much more important can I say just from that example of why it's important to get out to vote? Now, if you get into, and then it's just choice. It's your source of power. Voting now becomes power, because if you're putting in a whole, we'll just use judges, a whole building full of fair-minded people, not just your way or my way.